Hello everybody, hope you're doing well and thanks for joining us for another video. Now today I'd like to highlight a problem that I am frequently seeing from people, especially since the final experiment, which is a combination of, let's give benefit of the doubt here and say, poor research plus desperation fueling poor research and desperation. By that I mean some people who are desperate to dismiss the 24-hour sun that we witnessed in Antarctica are doing poor research on a topic to try and explain away the trip, then publishing a video about it to try and get others to dismiss it as well. Somebody else who is also desperate to dismiss the same event, seeing that video and just parroting it off in the video of their own, whilst jumping to completely incorrect conclusions without doing any actual research or analysis on the original video themselves before they parrot it off. And the cycle repeats. And like I say, I'm seeing a lot of this since returning from Antarctica. I mean, I was seeing it before anyway with people trying to discredit the globe, but post-Antarctica, it's become even more prominent as the level of desperation from people seems to reach an all-time high. Allow me to give you some examples. Flatzoid and his group seem to be very desperate at the moment to find reasons to try and dismiss and discredit the final experiment. They'll hold a magnifying glass to every frame of footage that we publish, scrutinizing every single word out of our mouths, looking for any possible anomaly or anything to throw doubt on the trip, and yet they seem to put absolutely no such scrutiny to anything that they find that supports their desire to dismiss TFE. They recently brought up a video from a channel called You Think, who was analysing our footage of the 24-hour sun and claiming that it's fake because apparently there's no parallax shift.
So what I do is I put a table in front of the camera and I put an arrow on the table. So now all I need to do in my footage, in my NLE, is keep the sun still. And when I do that, what must happen to the table? If I keep in the sun in front of me, the table must rotate, because the Earth is rotating. Now if we look at their footage, you see the same side of the table, right? Means the Earth's not rotating, and they're bullshitting you, because they're a bunch of clowns.
You Think has done several videos regarding TFE, and they brought up this parallax shift idea on multiple occasions. But when I saw Flatzoid's review of You Think's video, the animations of the cameras on the roundabout immediately sparked a red flag for me. Now, I said I'd give benefit of the doubt here regarding poor research. However, the benefit of the doubt is it poor research or is it intentional deception? Because You Think's video strays very close to the line in my opinion. Because they've created the animations for this demonstration. They're not stock ones that they found as an example. This is specifically made for the purpose of this video, but the animations don't correlate with each other. One of them shows an overhead view of the cameras on a roundabout together as cameras rotating on an Earth would be. But then they switch to a first-person view from the camera and suggest that our footage of the sun should have extreme parallax where the table that we had set up should always be in view. Except 5 seconds of critical analysis of this will tell you that's not the case. If you drive around a roundabout looking out of the car window at the sun, anything towards the center of the roundabout will only be in view when you are on the far side of the roundabout away from the sun. When you're on the near side to the sun, the center of the roundabout is in the opposite direction, which they show plain as day in the overhead view. The first-person view they present is not a first-person perspective of the previous overhead view. It's a completely different scenario in which the observer camera is physically moving around different places of the roundabout. You can tell it's not just them changing the camera perspective to a first-person view of the original render because the bike's now missing. They've had to compile a completely new setup for that first-person render, but they've not compiled it as an accurate representation of the overhead view to test what we should see and what it should actually look like. They've just presumed in their head that the table should stay in view, so they've then designed the render to show that, even though it should be blindingly obvious to anybody that that is not the case. Which is either sheer desperation that they've not actually thought about it before they've made it, or it's intentionally trying to deceive people. Either way, Flatzoid and his group all watched this and just went nodding along and actively agreeing with it, and none of them bothered analysing to see if that's what would be the case before they started running off and asserting it as fact and proof of fakery. Had they taken a moment to critically analyse that video, they probably would have spotted for themselves this glaring issue. Not only might they have then drawn a completely different conclusion in actually thinking that the 360 footage should show parallax when it in fact shouldn't, but it might have even made them question the rest of YouThink's videos rather than just taking it at face value just because it's convenient for them. It's very important to critically analyse things before you go drawing conclusions. For example, when Brilliant.org asked if they could sponsor my videos, I didn't just agree to it out of nowhere, I put it to the test and I analysed it for myself. I mean, the fact that they are sponsoring this video should give you a clue as to my conclusions though. To me, Brilliant is one of the best and most effective ways of learning. They have so many classes across different topics that start with the basics and build up gradually, and I find their interactive animations makes it much easier to grasp the concepts, and thanks to their app, you can jump in and do a spot of learning whenever and wherever you please. I even did classes whilst I was in Antarctica. That also allowed me to keep my daily streak going, which is now past 680 consecutive days of using it. Try it for yourself by taking a 30-day free trial using my link brilliant.org/Dave McKeegan, and doing so will also entitle you to 20% off their annual subscription. Now, another example where a lack of analysis has failed people is claims made by Steve, who has a channel called Hey Dude. He recently put out a more than 2-hour-long video talking about the reasons that he thinks our Antarctica trip was a lie. One of the reasons he puts forward is claiming that during a live stream Jeren was doing whilst we were there at Halfway Point, he apparently said the sun sets.
Admissions that have been made, including a massive one of Jeren sneaking into one of his on-site videos that the sun sets.
The sun will dip down right here. It doesn't go behind that mountain. Goes right above it, comes over here, gets back up high in the north, and then sets. A lot of people were saying something about this isn't...
Now, he brought this point up weeks ago on a live stream with Will Duffy, claiming that Jeren was somehow being forced to lie about seeing the 24-hour sun, but that he'd accidentally let slip about it. But Will brought Jeren on himself onto the stream, and Jeren reaffirmed that the sun didn't set. And there was a contention of whether Jeren actually said the word set, or instead the word since. Because he's jumping from talking about the sun to then suddenly talking about the camp.
And then sets. A lot of people were saying something about this isn't near Union Glacier.
But despite all of that, Steve has since pressed on anyway, publishing this massive video, and within a matter of hours, Level Earth Observer did a video parroting Steve's claims that Jeren has said the sun set and concluding that TFE is a lie. And within a few hours of that, Flatzoid was live and immediately jumped into covering LEO's video about Steve's video, and again, jumping on the bandwagon of Jeren said set, therefore fake. Now, this is 3 levels of no critical analysis being done and instead just desperate straw clutching. Jeren was talking about the path that we observed the sun take in Antarctica.
The sun will dip down right here. It doesn't go behind that mountain. Goes right above it, comes over here, gets back up high in the north, and then sets. A lot of people were saying something about this isn't near Union Glacier.
We arrived in Antarctica in the afternoon. About 3 p.m. local time we got to the main camp. ALE took us up to halfway point about 5.5 hours later, so we were setting up approaching 9 p.m. We watched the sun elevation go lower for the first few hours as it moved south, but Jeren specifically highlights that the sun did not go behind Mount Rossman.
The sun will dip down right here. It doesn't go behind that mountain.
Then, after solar midnight, which was about 2 a.m., the sun elevation began increasing, reaching its peak in the early afternoon when the sun was north of us. And Jeren was live streaming when the sun was to the west, as we were all packing down, which was around 9 or 10 p.m. So if Jeren actually said the sun set, based on his description, he was talking about how the sun dropped down towards Mount Rossman in the south, but didn't actually go behind it, then climbed up as it got north, and then apparently sets. Yet he's streaming whilst the sun is clearly visible in the sky to our west, which would mean Jeren would be claiming that the sun set at around 5 in the afternoon, northwest of us, having just been at the highest point in the sky 3 hours earlier. Then after it's set, it's magically rose straight back up to be clearly visible 4 hours later in the west. That as a sun path is even harder to explain than trying to work out how a 24-hour sun works. But they've seemingly not considered that. And like I pointed out to both Steve and Flatzoid when I was on live streams with them, we did multiple live streams in Antarctica at various times throughout the day. Jeren did a stream from the main camp before we travelled up to halfway point, so his stream was late afternoon, probably around 5 or 6 p.m. Will then streamed at local midnight for almost an hour, showing the sun approaching south of us towards Mount Rossman. Immediately after Will's stream, Critical Think started doing a live stream where he was talking directly to a flat earther called Mike. That ran on for about an hour, so that would put it finishing around 1:30 a.m.-ish. When that finished, MC Toon then went live to cover local solar midnight, which is when the sun reaches its lowest point in the sky. That stream ran for almost 3 hours before Starlink unfortunately threw the towel in. That caused the stream to crash, but that was getting on for around 5 a.m. of back-to-back live streams with the sun easily viewable towards the direction of Mount Rossman. Will then went live again a few hours later to address claims that were being made regarding green screens. That was around midday, with the sun now north of us, very high in the sky. That was followed about an hour or so later with Austin going live on his YouTube channel for almost an hour. I went then live around 9 p.m, 24 hours after we'd arrived and set up at halfway point. My stream was getting on for close to 3 hours, with the sun clearly visible in a westerly direction. It was during this time that I was streaming that Jeren actually went out and did his live stream that Steve is referencing. And then Will streamed one final time as we were packing down for almost an hour. So by this point it must have been around midnight again, with the sun once again approaching Mount Rossman. So that is a single 24-hour period where live streams totaling about 9 hours worth of time were done at 7 separate times with the sun clearly visible in all manner of directions. But they completely brush all that aside, and instead we're left with their desperation and poor analysis of focusing solely on their belief of a single word. First from Steve, leading him to make a video, then from Leo doing a video about that, followed by Flatzoid doing a live stream about both of them. All of that focus on their belief that Jeren said the sun set, even though Jeren has also repeatedly stated that it didn't set. Now that is cherry picking at its finest. And even if he did misspeak and say that it set, he was talking about the sun at that point when it was in a northwest direction, which would put it during Austin's live stream, and after we'd already been in Antarctica for more than 24 hours without the sun setting. And the last example that I wanted to share, again, comes from Flatzoid, where he was streaming a reaction to another video that was done about me by a channel called Flatiron Fred. The video that he was covering was trying to pick holes in the solar photography that I'd done in Antarctica. For anyone unaware, whilst I was in Antarctica, I had an equatorial mount set up with a camera and a solar filter, which spent a full 24 hours getting photographs every minute of the sun and its sunspots. Not only did I show a time-lapse of the more than 1,400 photos that it took during that time, but I also uploaded all of the original RAW files straight off the memory card onto Google Drive, along with JPEG versions of each file as well, and made them all publicly available so that everybody could go and verify the photos for themselves. Now, in the video that Flatzoid is covering, they claim to have spotted anomalies with the files. One being the number sequence going from 0192 jumping to 8780, arguing that there are some 8,500 images that aren't there that they're saying that I'm hiding from people.
Everything in between is missing.
It's inconsistent.
Sure. Big gap there, dude.
So there seems to be 8,587 photos missing from the raw image folder. If this is true, then that adds up to 140 hours of photos missing.
Man.
140 hours.
Wow.
How long were they in Antarctica again?
It's not that long. Wow.
Where
4
are
days.
they? Flats, where are they? That's what I want to know.
And also highlighting that the images are dated across the 14th, 15th, and 16th of December. Now, upon hearing that argument, Flatzoid and his group immediately springboard at the idea that we've shot the sun across 3 separate days in between periods of the sun setting.
Because after this, I got actually a video I want to go through from a small channel. He sent me a link, which he released today, where he went through all the photos of Dave McKeegan's sunspots, and it shows that they're taken different days, not the same day.
Ooh.
And there's a whole bunch missing that can account for it went below the horizon. On the folders, it shows the dates for those photos. So it's all done on different days, 3 different days.
Yeah,
all the
that
photos.
gives me an idea, Flats.
And,
he took over the period of the 3 days and put them together and made it 1 day.
Exactly. And that's why it shows the sun did indeed go behind the horizon, and they fabricated it to make it look like there's a full 24 hours.
Yeah.
Martin Hill
Hence why they never did an actual 24-hour live stream.
I.e., they think that I shot the sun for several hours on the 14th, then it set, then after it rose on the 15th, I'd have shot a few more hours of photos, and then repeat again on the 16th, and then put them all together. Now, this is exactly why I made all of the original RAW files publicly available for everybody online, so that they can go and look for themselves exactly when the photos were taken to verify these claims before they go bombarding off with them. But Flatzoid didn't do that. He jumped straight into making half-baked claims with no real specifics about any of it. I mean, first of all, let's appreciate the insane sway of how much they must rate our intelligence here, that apparently we're collectively smart enough to plan this entire trip with flat earthers to go to Antarctica, not only pull off recording the full 24-hour sun from multiple cameras, but also do it in real time across numerous live streams. Himself set up, and he's had these recording non-stop video footage, and apparently have the brains to think up doing these solar photos of the sun across 3 separate days, somehow manipulating things so that the raw files show sunspots in a different orientation to how everyone else in the world is seeing them at that same point. Yet apparently none of us thought of the implications of then making those raw files publicly available if they had timestamps in 3 distinct large groups with several hours missing between them. Of course, reality is rather different than what they're envisaging. Fortunately, I happened to catch this part of the live stream as it was happening, So I popped a gentle hint to Flatzoid in his chat, suggesting that he should go and check the times and dates for himself rather than taking Flatiron Fred's words for things.
Dave McKeegan's in chat.
Is he?
Yeah.
Really? Oh, nice.
Dave, yeah, we're just showing this is what the guy's showing. So, yeah, we'd have to go through it, obviously, but this is what this guy's showing, Dave.
Now, personally, I don't buy his statement of, oh, of course we were going to check them, because logic would say that you do the due diligence of checking them before you start jumping to conclusions. Yet by that point, he'd already claimed that we'd shot them over 3 separate days in between sunsets.
The period of the 3 days and put them together and made it one day.
Exactly. And that's why it shows the sun did indeed go behind the horizon.
I mean, he did at least follow through with it afterwards and pull up the Google Drive folder to look through them, although he seemed to be really struggling to work out sorting the files by date and then seeing when they were actually taken. So in the end, I wound up just joining his stream myself so that I could screen share the memory card of the photo raw files for everyone to see exactly when they were shot. But had they managed to pull up the Google Drive folder and put them in list format and order by date, they would have seen more than 1,400 raw files, 5 of which were dated on the 14th, 29 of them were dated on the 16th, and the remaining almost 1,400 photos were dated on the 15th. So straight away with that information, their idea of faking it by shooting over 3 separate days dies on its arse. That claim would have never have existed had they checked the photo details properly before they started jumping to conclusions. And what they also might have noticed was the flaw in Flatiron's other claim, the one regarding the supposed 8,000 missing photos. The photo 0001 is dated on the 15th. They stay dated the 15th until photo 0165, which then moves to the 16th. The 16th then runs through to photo 0193. Then we have the apparent 8,000 missing photos that jump us up to photo 8780, but that one's dated the 14th, 2 days prior. You see, what actually happened with the photos that I even explained in the very video that Flatiron is referencing, and on Sony cameras that I use, once you reach the file number 9999, it reverts back to 0001, but it starts it in a new folder on the memory card as a protection, because if the first folder already has a photo 0001, then the camera would overwrite it. So my photos are running, in fact, starting at 08780, running through to 99999, then going to 0001, and then running through to 0193, which you can see if you put the photos in the Google Drive folder by date order. Instead, Flatiron ordered the photos by file name and spotted this apparent 8,500 missing photos. Somehow he managed to spot all of that, but missed the jump that goes from the 14th to the 16th, even though he also did a very in-depth analysis of the number of photos from each day, as well as calculating the space that he thinks would be required for the time-lapse. But apparently didn't notice that the file names of the 15th were numbered after the 16th, which is either severe desperation or another attempt at trying to deceive people like Flatzoid and his group, who then unfortunately lap it up without questions because it suits their narrative.
The period of the 3 days and put them together and made it one day.
Exactly. And that's why it shows the sun did indeed go behind the horizon.
Even though they all hark on about just wanting to find the truth and they're only looking for inaccuracies and inconsistencies to get the story straight, yet they're only applying that stringent analysis on things that argue in favor of there being a 24-hour sun and completely missing the glaring problems with all of the videos they're pulling up that argue against the 24-hour sun. And just in case anyone is wondering why the dates of the photos spanned 3 days, the camera was set to GMT rather than local time. We got to halfway point around 8:30 p.m. So the first photos I took at halfway point were just before midnight GMT for the camera, which that then quickly rolled into the 15th for the camera, and it ran for 24.5 hours. So the time in the camera rolled over past midnight on the 15th and captured about a half an hour's worth of photos that were dated on the 16th. Well, anyway, hopefully this video highlights to everyone the importance of actually analysing the validity of people's claims before you go parroting them off as proof for fakery. I mean, it seems only fair, if they're going to throw our evidence under a microscope, that they analyse their own evidence with the same rigour. I guess time will tell as to whether that happens or not. For now, though, it leaves me to just say thanks for watching. As always, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video and you haven't already done so, then please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.